Welcome to Minutes by Minutes. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we're here to talk about what goes on in the community, the municipalities, the township, and those individuals that make regulations, laws, and ordinances that affect you out there.
And just remember, these are the people that you elected, whether you live in Oxford Township, the Village of Oxford, Village of Leonard, or Addison Township. And the committees and the commissions that they appoint make decisions that directly affect you, whether you show up at the meetings or not. And that's why we're here.
Probably would be a good idea if you showed up, because if you don't know about it when it's happening, you definitely will learn about it later, and it might hurt more later than present. Right?
Whatever control you thought you had, you gave up if you didn't go to the meeting.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about some of the things that went on in the township.
Okay.
They had a
Which one?
Oxford.
Oh, well, that one.
Yeah, Oxford Township Planning Commission. They had a meeting, and it was a very interesting meeting. It was long. It had a lot of content to it, and the main subject, you'll never guess what it is, but can you say Wei Ming?
I can say Wei Ming.
Okay. That's the Chinese educational program or dormitory that they're talking about building.
In one of its many locations.
Yeah. One of them. As a matter of fact, that came up during the discussion. One individual stood up and they said, look, so far there's, which plan is it going to go? Because there's so far at least one other plan that's been approved, by the Township Planning Commission.
Well, okay, which one was that? Was that the one that was over by the Meyer store?
Yeah, the US 24,
that one.
M24, that one.
That one, okay.
Right there. Anyway, so the individual informed the board that you can't, which one is it going to be? Are they going to build multiple locations then, being this was approved? Well,
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Because this one, of course, involves the Oxford Road location, the new location I think about putting it.
Right, and because it's, just to draw the line here, because it's north of the Pollyant Trail, it's part of the township. If it were south, then it would be part of the village.
Well, Chairman Hunwick, he wanted to point out, look, the plan that was approved in advance wasn't the plan, it was a preliminary plan. So there has never been a plan actually approved by, this particular commission. So he wanted to point that out.
Okay.
And the other one, he said, does have a lot of conditions to it as well. And it looks as though they're not going to implement that particular plan, so that's not even going to be a consideration.
This was the one behind Myers.
Behind Myers.
In effect,
yes.
They both are, but that's okay. The one that was closest to it.
Right, the one before you hit the hill.
Right.
The one we're talking about now is on the hill, but on the other side, right?
Right,
in other words, over the hill.
And there's many stories about this. As a matter of fact, what? 1, 2, 3, 4 stories?
Well, that's another issue that came up in the discussion. There were several people that stood up during the public, where they get an opportunity to talk, the public forum. They said, for example, there's a fellow named Bruce Myers,
okay,
who lives on Delano Road, and he said, is this a dormitory or is this a college? Because he said there's specifications and requirements in terms of ordinance that stipulates what you can do in terms of parking spaces, all those kind of things for a dormitory as opposed to a college setting, that kind of thing. So is it to be rooming residents? Is it going to be kind of a rooming house, or is it going to be an educational building?
Well, it's kind of primarily a dormitory, but it does have some educational facilities within it.
It does. The person that's leading this spearhead to gain more information is Callie Rossner Myers.
Right, and she's also on the Planning Commission for the township.
Yeah, she's very well informed, though. I mean, and she has a group of people. It's called Team 20.
Team 20.
And right. I think it numbers in over 100 people that are involved in terms of residents and people that have an interest in this process. Of course, we know that this all began with the school wanting to have this dormitory put in. And originally they were going to put it on school property.
Right up at the corner of Ray Road and Oxford Road.
Right, and that didn't work out so well, so they now decided that they would build it on M24, and that apparently didn't work out either because of parking restrictions and requirements.
Well, it's not a dead issue, is it?
Well, it's not dead, but it's not moving very well.
Okay. Well,
it's,
enter option 3.
Option 3, right. And option 3, as you pointed out, they want a 4-story building. Well, the ordinance reads that they're limited to a 3-story building.
Because they're on the wrong side of the Pollyant Trail.
Right, right, because the village has the ability to go a taller building.
How tall can it go?
Well, it depends. Now, they can go up to 5 stories.
Well.
Now, it's tied into also maximum height. For example, the way the ordinance reads for the township is you can go 3 stories maximum and no higher than 45 feet.
Oh, it just depends on what kind of a tall story you want.
Yeah, or if you have really short people, no, I don't think you can do that. That's why it defines how many stories you can go.
I see.
Now, interesting enough, the village actually has changed their ordinance a while back where they can go up to 5 stories in terms of height.
Ah.
So you're thinking maybe they might want to move again, huh?
Hey.
But that particular roadblock that they have in terms of the building height, also the length of the building are considerations too. I believe the maximum required is about 220 feet in length, and it's going to be wider than that. So, but the main consideration, as Ed Hunwick pointed out, who's a commissioner, is that he can make the rest of it work, but the height, he said, it's as far as he can see, it's not in accordance with the ordinance.
Which might require a variance.
Yep, they'll have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Right.
But the first issue that they were talking about here was land use. In other words, they had to get a special land use in order to build this building there, because this zone right now, RN.
Meaning?
Residential, multiple residential in that area.
In that area?
In that area.
But it's just south of it is a storage unit.
It is, but it is zoned.
Unless there's people living in it.
Well, I don't know if they're living there or what they're doing there, but anyway, it's zoned that, and I'm assuming that they had to get a variance in order to have that storage system put in there a number of years ago.
What they're looking for is what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Right. Well, here's what it boiled down to. There's a lot of debate over, if it should be rezoned, that kind of thing. And as the chairperson, Todd Bell, pointed out, that they're there for a land use approval.
Right.
And he said nothing else at this point. After they do the land use approval, then they will look at doing the site plan, and reviewing that and giving a preliminary outlook as to acceptance or not. And so they needed to do that first, and there were a whole stream of people that stood up and they talked about, parking and how much space there is, for parking vehicles, that kind of thing.
But there's considerably more acreage on this new proposed site than there was on the old one.
Right, roughly about 5 acres, I think, in there.
And the old one was what, 2 point something?
2.7, I think it was. It was pointed out, to Jack Curtis, who made a statement that there's 74 parking spots there, designed in, up to 122.
Even though the students won't be allowed to have cars.
Yeah. Well, they do have 2 bike stands now that they put in, supposedly.
Well,
that's in the drawing anyway. No bikes, but 2 stands.
Well, that's a massive improvement over the previous one.
It is. And Jack Curtis, of course, is concerned about, the green belt and being able to, make it look like a...
What's a green belt?
Well, it's to isolate, other areas, from this campus. And Jack Curtis is pointing out that it should be a kind of university-type feeling to it and look, So you want to design it so that there's...
So the building should be really old-looking and covered with ivy?
No. Actually, the looks of the building did come up. And
I see.
The architect gave pictures, 3D pictures, which was pretty interesting. And
it looks like Downton Abbey. No.
Actually took it for a walk that you could actually, where your car would be moving up Oxford Road and what it would look like. The materials they use are the same materials that they use for the high school.
Okay.
So it's going to be compatible in terms of, continuity and the way it looks.
Okay.
So it's going to present itself well. The 4-story height was a consideration that I'll talk about in just a moment. But again, it was put to a vote, and everyone agreed, except for one vote, and that was Callie, declined the land use agreement. So that part of it was passed.
Wasn't there an issue there that she might have to recuse herself from voting?
No, she won't have to do that, and I'll tell you why when we come back right after this.
All right.
Hi everybody, I'm Terry Stiles.
And I'm Bill Service. I'm the producer of our Community Access. For nearly 10 years, Terry and I have been bringing our Community Access into your living rooms to keep you informed about what's happening in our communities.
We've all had great fun at our community events such as Lone Ranger and Strawberry Festivals.
We brought you natural wonders such as bees and ceremonies to bless them.
We've kept you informed of election issues and how your votes affect all of us.
And we've told you about our local artist important fundraisers that help the ones you love.
We've helped you get to know our new business neighbors and much, much more.
But we're not done yet. There's much more we plan to cover, so watch us weekdays on Charter Channel 191 and AT&T Channel 99 at 9:30 at 1, then at 7 o'clock, and Saturday at 9:30.
See you there.
Welcome back to Minutes by Minutes. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kinney.
And when we left, we were talking about Kelly Rossner Myers, if she needed to be excused.
Or recused.
Or recused, yeah.
To recuse herself or
Right.
to be excused.
Right.
There's got to be
Either
there's got to
or.
be a difference in those words. Maybe they're both the same. I don't know.
Hey, close enough, okay? Anyway, does she have the ability to vote on these issues? I think is probably the question.
Because of her involvement with Team 20.
With Team 20.
That's right.
She does, because she's not really representing Team 20 when she's on the board. She's presenting information in terms of ordinances, information, and locations of various ordinances in reference. And she's presenting that to the board for consideration. She's not saying, you know, I'm on the board of Team 20, and this is the way our group thinks or does. In other words, she doesn't represent that group while she's on the council or on this commission. See what I'm saying?
No, but go ahead.
Don't? Okay. You'll never understand, folks.
I'll never understand.
But yes, she gets an opportunity to vote. She can do that on these issues. And she did have an opportunity to vote on this particular issue, and she declined to approve the land use part of it. So then they talked about the building, and we discussed that just a little bit in terms of the architecture. It's going to be, I think, an L-shape architecture.
With the same brickwork as the high school, so it looks like a similar piece of architecture.
It's going to have a cafeteria area or an eating area. That'll house about 200 people, I think. And they're actually looking at that part too in terms of revision.
Okay.
That they may make it a little bit larger because they're thinking there might be some special occasions that occur, special events, that kind of thing, that they might use it.
Are they still planning on having 3 or 4 classrooms in there too?
Oh yes,
Okay.
but the classrooms are actually designated in one of the L wing sections. Boy, I can already spit that one out, could I? But anyway, in one of those sections, yeah. And you folks can see more of this, you know, in terms of the drawing. They did a 3-dimensional layout of the building and how a conceptual look and what it was going to be when completed. By going to our website, OCCTV.org.
Click on programs?
Yep. And you'll find it right in there, one of the little thumbprints, as far as the Oxford Township Planning Commission meeting. And you get that in its entirety. As we move on, they discussed sewer. They discussed the availability of water to that area. They had our township engineer, Jim, I'm trying to think of his last name, but his first name is Jim. Anyway, he said
Wilson?
No,
that's a different one.
That would be the village. And
That's right.
Completely different. This is an engineer.
Okay.
Boy, it's right there. Can you see it? No, I can't.
No.
Okay. Anyway.
Jim, we're looking for you.
Yeah, we're looking for you. Are you out there, Jim? You'll probably call us right after this, right? You'll say, hey, I'm Jim. Which one? Okay.
I don't get no respect.
Get no respect, right. So anyway, they were looking for preliminary approval of the site plan, and they actually received that, except with conditions, and that is that they couldn't get around the 3-story ordinance and the 45-foot height. Almost said inch. That's 45 inch.
I thought it was going to be 4 stories.
It's going to be 4-story, and they need to get around that.
Okay.
They need a 3-story ordinance. So that they were told that you have to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals and make your petition there. Okay, so that tells that part of the story. now for the second part of the story. Here it comes. Wei Ming, and who represents Wei Ming, put a stop to going to the Zoning Board of Appeals at that point.
Because?
Because they say that there's still negotiating efforts going on with the developer. And talking to the developer says, huh? I don't think there's any. He said, I didn't know there was any. He said, I don't understand why.
Is that where they both look at each other and go, we need to talk?
Yeah, I think they need to talk, right. So anyway, so since it was withdrawn, I mean, that would be the logical approach to take it to the Zoning Board of Appeals, because they're the legislative part of the township and can actually go, make an adjustment to the ordinance to suit, the project that they're doing. The only part of the organization that can do this is the Zoning Board of Appeals. So
to be continued.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if they didn't take it forward, which I was talking to a couple of commissioners, and they said they can't understand why they didn't just go right on with it, because then if it was approved, it would come back to the Planning Commission, at which time they now have an open gate to go ahead and pursue whatever they need to do if it meets the requirements of the township in terms of ordinances.
So that that gate need to be opened at the Planning Commission to the ZBA at that time? No.
And right now, if it comes back, it's going to end up at ZBA, because there's no way that they can get around the ordinance.
Right. Okay.
So it has to be approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals.
To be continued.
It will be continued. It seems like we've been going on and on with this. It's kind of like a snowball rolling downhill, and the weather's getting warmer. We don't know what's going to happen.
We know more about Wei Ming now than we know about any part of that county or the township.
And no matter who you talk to, it doesn't matter if it's a local village, it doesn't matter if you're talking to the school board. Doesn't matter if you're talking to local residents. Everybody has opinions as to what should happen here, I think.
Yep.
Don't you?
And that's why are they still doing the forums on the Wei Ming?
They have one for May, I think May 12th coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Either May 12th or 13th.
So who's going to be the leader of that one? Will it be Mr. Throne or Mr. Skilling?
Actually, Tim Throne is the new superintendent of Oxford Schools. And by the way, that's one thing that has come up too with the Board of Education, with residents, is that why do you need a consultant, for the school system? In other words, hire a separate contract with Dr. Skilling when you have Tim Throne, in the major position here. Well, the point was that the transition for Wei Ming, because of the background and what's conspired here over the last couple of years and the involvement that Dr. Skilling had, is that he should continue this at least for a couple months.
Is he still employed by the school?
He is. He's still employed. Originally, he was going to...
So in that function, he can do that without being a consultant?
He could. Up until his date of retirement. Now, originally, he was going to retire at the end of August. And he was going to be gone. Now he's saying the end of June, I believe it is, that he's going to take his retirement. So if that happens, then he won't be on the payroll, other than if they sign a contract for this consulting job. And I believe that that's been already...
Who would sign the contract, Wei Ming or the school?
No, the school did, to have Dr. Skilling interface with Tim Throne, the new superintendent of schools.
I see.
So that he could, be acclimated as to what needs to be done and how to handle this in the future and take
post June 1st.
Post June 1st, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so there's notoriety going on about that too with the Team 20 group. They're saying you don't need an additional consultant to work, with Tim Throne. That everything is in place now. There's some additional contract work to be done negotiating with Wei Ming, but there's no reason why Tim Throne can't hit that up.
The documentation should be in place.
Right. And again, Callie Meyer is the one that's leading the charge for this. So, and she has all her ducks in a row, and they're all quacking. So, we'll talk about the quackers when we come back, right after this.
Your local business.
Your police department.
Your local business.
Your village of Oxford.
The schools.
OCTV.
Welcome back to Minutes by Minutes. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we beat the living squat right out of the school system and the Planning Commission for the township. So
I can hear people going, please, no more.
yes, right. So let's talk about now the Cable Communications Commission, shall we?
OACCC, our parent organization.
You were there.
I was there. You were there.
I was there too. First thing they did is they covered the bills. Hey, we got any bills outstanding? Yeah, we got $27,000 outstanding. All those in favor of approving? Aye. All done. That was quick. Right?
That's what they say on board ship.
That's what they say on board ship. Right. Aye. Was there any unfinished business? Well, Terry Stiles says, hey, we're going to talk about the school. Again, we're back to the school.
Oh, boy.
I said, well, what about the communications, the broadcast program that they have? And she said, well, there's a gentleman that's taken over, Chaz is his name.
What's his last name?
You know what? I'd have to ask Terry.
Oh, okay.
I can't recall. Do you recall?
No.
Make a note.
Make a note.
We'll bring it back to you, folks.
Make a note.
He's got a long list of notes. I don't know where they disappear, but they just disappear after I say make a note. So there we go. You'll never hear any more. But anyway, Terry said that they have good rapport with the new person that has come into the school system, and actually has made contact with Tim Throne also, this new superintendent, and he said anything that he can do to work with the studio as well. He said he'd be more than happy to work with Terry and the others.
What I understand, at the beginning of the school year for 2015, he'll be ready to go.
He will. Should be.
Okay.
Could be. Might be. I don't know. We'll see.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah. And he did confide in me that the technical side of it, there's some things with the equipment he has he's not quite familiar with, and he said that he would appreciate, some help here if he run into a situation. We said, sure, we'll send David over there.
I'll take a note.
Take it. Okay. So, anyway, they said, is there any new business? And Terry says, yeah, there is. Let's talk about coalition. Coalition, what do you mean, coalition? I said, well, we're thinking about maybe approaching some other communities to see if they would be interested in OCTV shooting, some production work for them.
Right.
And maybe some sports and other things.
And some communities have a very minimal presence in their public television station, and we would be more than happy to work with them to provide a little bit more things that are meaningful to their community.
And actually, some residents from Brandon and also Lapeer have approached us and said, look, we would like to have your team come in and shoot our meetings and shoot our sports programs. What do we need to do in order to do that? We said it's called funding. Can you say ka-ching, ka-ching? But it's up to their, their councils and people that run their government in order to make that approval. But the citizenship needs to, if they're interested in it, they need to approach them on it. But the money's out there.
And there's budgetary considerations in all these communities where the money that they get from cable, in some cases, is rerouted to other functions in their community. So maybe if they took some of that back and devoted it to providing us with the ability to give them that service, then that'd be a good thing.
And I think another thing that, Terry Stiles is very vocal, in this discussion that they had with the Communications Commission members, but she said, by the way, financially, we're pretty well set, and we have projected a 3-year budget that we'd like to see in terms of needs, for the station, and yet we don't see any of that money being channeled, for those purposes. And so her point was that they've done a great job in terms of conserving these funds, making them solvable, being strong financially, but now is the time to go on with the next step, and they need to take the initiative in order to do that. So I think that was their point.
And these may be expenses that won't be immediate, but could be necessary in the next 2, 3, 4 years. So basically, I think what the thrust of that argument was to earmark some of the outstanding funds to go towards the purchase or the expenditure to cover those needs in that future period.
Yeah. The idea is if the tornado is coming, get the warning in advance.
Sure.
Let them know it's coming so you're prepared. Okay, and she's just saying, we should be prepared. We've indicated, what we're going to need in 3 years, and actually did a projection for 5 years, but the 3-year projection, they should get serious about it. And, they took it, I think, seriously.
Right.
So,
Have you been putting something aside over a 3 or 4 year period? It doesn't come as a big surprise when finally you walk in and say, well, we need to buy this new piece of equipment or building or whatever.
yeah, and talking about surprises, they said, by the way, you bought a new piece of equipment. Why did you buy that new piece of equipment?
Because the old one broke.
And it was a server that broke, and the server is for one of our major drives, actually a couple.
Right, right.
And so we patched it together, got it going until we could, bring in a new server, which we did.
Right.
And so that was a little expense we weren't looking for.
But it's a big improvement in performance.
Faster, better.
And faster, better, longer, wider. You know how that goes.
Got it. Hey, I want to make a point here that there's a new president of the bank for Oxford Bank. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Kevin Wisely?
No.
No, it isn't.
No.
Oh, Oxford Bank. I was thinking of Genesis.
No, this is David Lamb.
David Lamb. Oh, okay.
He's new to this area, but he has served in banking profession, I think, for over 29 years. He has served as CEO of other bank institutions as well as vice president of other institutions. So it comes with a lot of experience, background.
Right. And Oxford Bank is a growing concern. I mean, it's not just the one here at Oxford. They have one in Brandon. I believe they have one in Goodrich, if I'm not mistaken. And, yeah.
They do. And his point was that I'm new to this area, but I'm going to get out. I'm going to meet the citizenship. I'm going to talk to everybody.
Good.
I'm going to get involved in the various community projects and efforts that you have going on here in Oxford. So he's going to be a face that people are going to recognize, I think, in the community. Good. Good to have you on.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, you got it. One other thing, Oxford Village Planning Commission, they did review a site plan approval for 8789 South Washington for Becker Eye Care. And they talked about parking, all kinds of things, for that location.
Doesn't he have an office south of town?
I think he probably does, but I think they want to be centralized in that area now.
Okay.
It's in a CO district, commercial office district, so that doesn't really conflict with what they're going to do here.
Good.
They had talked about parking, that kind of thing, and also sharing a driveway with the dentist next door. Other parking available is, when the dentist isn't in operation, they could use the parking, share the parking. And apparently they've shown an interest in doing that and putting an agreement together. So that'll be good for both businesses. All said and done, it was approved.
Good.
The site plan was approved and it's ready to go, and that's with the agreement of the consultant, as well. So, excuse me, everything fell in place. One other thing that they did is they appointed a new ZBA member. His name is Gary Digg, I believe it is, and he's going to be serving on the ZBA board for the village. Now, what's coming up?
We have stuff coming up. And the very first thing is on, May 5th? Get out there and vote. Find out about Proposition 1, so you'll go with some knowledge as to what you're voting for. So it won't be a big surprise when you see that thing. Right. Okay, on the same day, 4/5, May 5th, it's 7 o'clock, the Village of Oxford Planning Commission. And on 5/9, it's the 6 o'clock Classic Chorale at the All Things Bright and Beautiful. It's going to be the name of the show at I think it's the Methodist Church there in south of Oxford. On 5/11 at 7 o'clock, Oxford Township ZBA, and at 7 o'clock that same night, Village of Leonard Council. And on 5/12 at 6:30, Village of Oxford Council, 7 o'clock, Oxford Township Parks and Rec, and at 7:30 that same night, Addison Township Planning Commission.
This is Minutes by Minutes. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kinney.
Catch you next time right here.
See you there.